It's February 1st, 2021. This is Roqe. Well, his writing has been considered transformative in Iranian literature over the past half-century, and he's one of the most accomplished figures in contemporary Persian writing. He's also a novelist and essayist who has been censored, banned, and even targeted for death by the Iranian regime. Shahriyar Mandanipour now lives in exile in the United States and continues to produce internationally recognized works of fiction, including his most recent novel, Moonbrow. He joins me for a feature chat about writing, exile, war, and love. Shahriar Mandanipour coming up, plus Mona from Melbourne with the Persian Proverb of the Week, and we'll get to some of your letters as well. This is Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. This is Roqe. Hi there, welcome to episode number 81 of Roqe, coming to you from Toronto, North America. Hope you are keeping well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. Salam dostan aziz, durud bar shama. Coming up on this program, Shahriyar Mandanipour. He will be joining me from Berkeley, California in a few minutes. This is the superb, acclaimed, and inventive Iranian novelist and essayist. His perspective is really not to be missed. His works are outstanding. His experience ranging from being on the front lines of the Iran-Iraq War to his journey west in 2006 is instructive. But may I also say, he was one of the 21 writers who were almost assassinated, murdered, on a bus headed together to Armenia in the 1990s. This is an infamous case where the Iranian regime attempted to kill off a bunch of the most famous and dissenting Iranian writers of the entire era, all at once on a bus trip. It's a wild and horrific story. He was on that bus. He was a main player there, and I will ask him about it. Shahriar Mandanipour in just a few moments. The Roqe team is here. Hello, Captain Reza.
Hello, sir.
Hello, the fabulous Kian.
Hello, Jian.
Hello, Groovy Shaya.
Salam Aziza.
Salam. Our last show Thursday was so much fun. I loved it. I listened back and I was still laughing. We had all this like chemistry going on, Not today. Self-satisfaction has set in. Fatigue, resting on our laurels. Porkhori. There's, it's just,
Maybe I should elevate it with a British accent.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Although, I don't know if Captain Reza and the fabulous Kian know this. Shaya, I happen to know you did a little skiing on the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
I love when a Persian artistic bohemian stoner goes skiing. What did you do?
Actually, it was cross country. It's much easier than
sort of. It's actually more in a way.
Yes,
it's harder. Yeah,
yes, and it was really fun, and I think it's kind of Canadian traditional when people go cross country. No.
No. Yes, there are people who do cross country for sure. But
I love how me and Jian look at each other like, is it?
Who's the new guy? Yeah. Somebody talk to him.
I'm sure there's other parts of the world where they do this.
For sure, skiing is big in Canada, obviously, especially in the west with the big mountains and stuff. But in cross country, yeah, absolutely. Did you ski when you were in Iran?
No.
Excellent, because it's mostly just desert and camels, right?
Yeah, right. Actually, but we have a great ski piste in Tehran, Dizin. It's a very famous.
A ski what?
Ski piste.
Oh, that's a Farsi word.
A ski piste.
Station. Or, yeah.
What's the ski?
Let us go to the ski piste.
Yeah,
the what? The ski piste.
Piste eski ağa.
So what does piste mean?
I think it means
trails
resort.
of
Oh.
Ski resort.
That's not English. I did not go cross-country skiing. I played a lot of Monopoly. That's
Okay.
the leading cause of broken families is Monopoly.
Well, you played with your family?
I did, yeah.
I'm still interested in the ski piste. It sounds like somebody who's had too much water to drink while skiing has to take a ski piste.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
What did you do, Jian?
what did I do? I had an oogie-free weekend.
What?
Yeah,
Where was
yeah. A
Oogie?
dear friend took oogie, and so I was Azad. Actually, I went for a long walk. I live near the lake in Toronto,
Yes.
so I went for a blustery walk by the long. It was really great. I mean, it's nice to sometimes not have my French bulldog accomplice wherever I go, but it was really nice. No ski pisting, however.
Pisting.
Actually, I'm searching now.
Is piste maybe mountain? No,
I think it's
that's
a
cool.
French word.
Peace.
Ski
Like
piste.
you know when you say you go to Blue Mountain, and then you ski there, it's kind of like the same thing. They say in Iran, they say they go to a ski piste.
A piste is a marked ski run or path down a
Is it in
mountain for snow skiing.
In what language? In Farsi?
In
French?
No, French.
French.
Ah,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Shia confusing things
All
by
right.
throwing in some French, despite the fact that he doesn't speak French. All right,
Cool.
let's gather ourselves. Yism, we are on an ongoing mission to build a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. We are coming to you on SoundCloud, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Castbox, and Telegram. If you want the bilingual version of the show, if you want your little descriptors and everything in Farsi, you can go to our Telegram. It's Roqe Media. But of course, for all things Roqe, if you want your information, you want to see previous episodes, you want to see which guests have been on the show, roqemedia.com. And currently on the front page of roqemedia.com is Chef Haas doing his recipe from hospitality for fesenjoon sauce.
Yes.
Have you all practiced making your fesenjoon?
I will this weekend. But he adds orange juice in there? Is that what
He does add orange juice. This was a...
I thought everybody added that. I'd never made.
Come on.
I've
You
never
really
made
did?
It, so I truly thought that was a way of making fesenjoon. I had no idea.
On what basis did you think that?
I
You just
know-
watched it in the video with us.
Basically, I've
Yeah.
never.
No,
watched
I
anybody
never
make
heard of that,
fesenjoon.
actually. I've
I didn't
never...
know. I
That was a
thought-
surprise to me. So roqemedia.com is where you can find the fesenjoon sauce. Go there. Mona from Melbourne coming up with the Persian Proverb of the Week. Plus, we're going to get to your letters. Again, some folks are not happy with us again.
Well, the Picasso episode, there was a mixed bag of letters. Let's just put it that way.
Listen, the Picasso episode, our most viewed and listened to episode
Wow.
on at least on Instagram that we've ever done.
Well, it
in
shows.
1 week, it's got like 70,000
Wow.
views on Instagram. Yeah. All right, Mona coming up. We'll get to the letters. Let's get to our feature guest. My feature guest today is one of the most accomplished and successful writers of contemporary Iranian literature. He's the author of 11 volumes of fiction, 1 nonfiction book, and more than 100 essays in literary theory, literature, and art criticism, creative writing, censorship, and social commentary. Shahriar Mandanipour was born in Shiraz, started writing at the age of 14. He was there, of course, during the 1979 revolution, and after the onset of the Iran-Iraq War in 1980, he joined the military and volunteered for duty at the front, where he served for more than 14 months. In cement trenches and holes dug in the earth and stone, he wrote, with the light of a lantern between the mortar attacks. As a result of his literary and political activities, Shahriar has been also subjected to harassment, threats, censorship, and intimidation by Iran's authorities. For a long period, from 1992 until 1997, he was unable to publish his work, including a novel and a collection of short stories. In 2006, Shahriar moved to the United States and has held fellowships at Brown University, Harvard, Boston College, as well as prominent institutions in Berlin and elsewhere. Shahriar's first novel to appear in English, Censoring an Iranian Love Story, came out about 10 years ago and was named by The New Yorker as one of the favorites of 2009, by the Cornell Daily Sun as Best Book of the Year for 2009, and by NPR as one of the best debut novels of the year. It was awarded the Athens Prize for Literature for 2011. His second book translated into English is called Moonbrow. Came out a couple of years ago. It is as well well. A compelling, provocative, and poetic piece of writing that harkens back to the Iran-Iraq War and unrequited and mysterious love. Shahriyar's works have been translated and published in 12 languages and in 14 countries throughout the world. And right now, Shahriar Mandanipour joins us from Berkeley, California today. Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm very honored, and it's a pleasure to get to talk to you. I spent the weekend reading Moonbrow. I've been so looking forward to talking to you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much, and I would like to say hello to your audience as well.
By the way, I've been watching your interviews. I know that you can speak English very well, but if you ever feel like you want to switch a little bit into Farsi, it's okay.
Yeah, that's the point is that it is a long time, maybe about 3 years that since I moved to California, I haven't any chance to talk in English, you know. So I wonder if I can remember the words that I need. Let's do it.
Shahriar, I want to focus on the most recent novel that came out a couple of years ago, Moonbrow, as well as on Persian literature and translation, and on the reality of being a writer in exile. But let me start with a general question to kind of situate you, perhaps. You've said a number of times in recent years that being an Iranian writer, or at least writing in Persian, is akin to walking in a minefield. That's quite heavy imagery. Can you give us a sense of why you see it that way?
Yeah, it came. This metaphor came from my experience from Iran-Iraq War. That I was there as a lieutenant. I was doing my army services, and there was time that we had to go to the enemy line or Iraqi's line and watch them and see their movements, watch their movements, and something like that. And I prefer that I go with my soldiers. So at night, when you're walking on a minefield, a field that it is said there is mine here and there, you don't know where the mine is. In the military, there is a sort of tactic to walking on the minefield.
Yes,
they call it walking like a camel, something like that, and it's so funny. At night, when you have just a few hours time and maybe 2-3 kilometers, you have to walk to go from a hidden way, get close to Iraqi's line. It was ridiculous. So at first we had to walk. And when you are walking in such a place, such a ground, then you will find out your heaviness. You will feel it, and it is your death. And that's the point.
I mean, the difficult part of it is that it's an incredibly heavy metaphor, but it's not metaphorical in the sense that you're talking about, masalan, getting attacked on social media or something. It can literally be life and death for writers in Iran, depending on what you're writing, depending on what kind of activities you have. But you've also said that after you put out a few books, you still know that the minefield is there, but you boldly go ahead anyway. Is it fair to say that most Iranian writers who are in Iran know what they're getting into in terms of the possible implications with authorities, etc.?
Yeah. You know, right now there are some Iranian writers, they are in the jail. In the past time, some years ago, we have lost a few writers. They assassinated them, Mohammad Mukhtari, Puyande, and the others. And I was even on that bus, that famous bus, well-known bus, that we were heading to Armenia. There was a plot to kill all of us.
Yes.
So it was a minefield.
I'm going to get to the bus, and I'm going to ask you about that, and I'm going to return to this idea of the nature of censorship, of the dangers of being a provocative writer in Iran, etc. Let me ask you about the moment as we start this interview. I mean, it's been a global pandemic. You're in California. I know it's been hit pretty hard there. In a way, superficially at least, we would think that a pandemic is a fertile time for a writer to get to work. You can just stay in the home. You're quarantined. Have you been writing?
Yeah, because most of the time, a writer is sitting behind of his table or her table and writing. But the point is that the writer needs to go outside among the people and looking for new experiences, looking for new characters, and even the feeling of living among the people, that they could be their characters in their novels or short stories. Yeah, being at home, it's not bad. Sometimes if the writer could be active in writing, maybe it's help him not get depression or anxiety. But at the end of the day, he or she needs to go outside.
Well, you have been active in recent years as a writer. Having read Moonbrow on the weekends, as I said, I was heartened to read this book of yours from just a couple of years ago, not only because it's I dare say, a tremendous piece of writing and visceral storytelling, which you're known for, but also because it is a new work. You have been prolific despite the fact that you are in exile. You are not in Iran. We had Shahriar Mandanipour on the show not too long ago. I'm sure you know her. And it was heartbreaking to talk to her, Shahriyar, because she says, she told me she cannot write at all these days. She hasn't written for the last few years. When I asked her why, she said, because I'm not in Iran. I just can't write. What do you think of her saying that?
I think I have to somehow change my attitude of writing. If I have to live outside of Iran, and if I can't live without writing, I have to find out a way to continue writing. Otherwise, I'm sure that personally it will make me sick. So I tried to find out myself in a new life in a Western country. For a few months, it was hard for me, but I found out that I have no choice.
Right.
I have to find out new audience, even new forms of writing. Although I'm writing in Persian, I insist to write in Persian. This is the only pressure that I have. But at last, I have no choice to change my point of view from Iran, if I could, to the world.
I have to ask you though. I mean, again, for I'm imagining for the average person, you would say, okay, so you're a writer. You can write if you're in Tehran. You can write if you're in Toronto. You can write if you're in a cabin somewhere in Australia. Chirapti dare. It was quite a paradox. It was actually extraordinary on the face of it to hear this from Shahriar Mandanipour. In her case, just like you, she was banned in Iran. She was censored in Iran. In her case, she was in prison for years. Yet she pines to be back in Iran to find her muse. As someone who has not only been such a prolific writer, but who has studied writers, how do you react when you hear the story of someone like her, crippled, unable to write when she's in California the way you are?
I think it is so personal. Nobody can help you. Not even in an exile situation, not even in being a diaspora writer. Each writer should find out his or her cure as well in such situations. It's so personal. I love Shahriar and I would like to help her as much as I could. But at the end of the day, she has to find out a way start writing in her new life.
Yeah. Do you understand the sentiment, though?
Yeah, I felt it many times. I felt it at the beginning of my journey to United States. For months, I told you that I couldn't write anything. I have no passion even for writing. Then I found it out. Maybe I was lucky on that time because there was a literature festival at Brown University. That year, Salman Rushdie and Orhan Pamuk were invited.
Yes.
So I found it forced me to write something. Something that I could find my audience in America.
You know, there's something else that you've said in I found in a clip of, but you never explained it, and I wanted to use this opportunity before we get into your actual story to ask you. You said that no matter how many stories you've written, in fact, you say no matter how many books or novels or stories that a writer writes,
Yeah.
when you sit down to write something new, you feel weakness. What does it mean? What feeling weakness?
Yeah, you feel weakness because I think if I feel that I am a great writer, I'm so experienced writer in the world, I publish many books and stories, yeah, it means that I die. If a writer is thinking this way, in my opinion, just in Farsi, Fateh Bekhun. And when you are going to start a new novel or a new short story, I think I have to feel that I am just an ape. If I know how great or how many masterpieces were written in literature all over the world, no matter short stories or novels, I know them, and I am going to write something and put it in front of a reader that he or she can read those masterpieces. Of course, I feel weak. And I feel weak because it is my role that I have to use new forms. I shouldn't repeat myself. I shouldn't repeat the form that I am so good on them. So I am like an ape.
What if you're a really smart and experienced ape, though? Then you have confidence.
If the story goes well, just it is like Mr. Darwin should come and watch such a writer. If the story goes well, writing the story goes well, then your back is getting straight. Then you are a human being.
Now I understand the ape example. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, this is a sort of evolution when you are writing a story. Yeah.
So when you start a new story, you're usually hunched over.
yeah. It is so exciting, and I got anxiety or maybe some problems. Yeah, it's not easy.
Take me back. Tell us a bit about your story, how you got here. You're, as I understand, you're born in Shiraz. You start writing at the age of 14. Before the age of 35, you officially enter the field of Iranian fiction with the collection of stories Shadows of the Cave. And after that, you become famous with the collection of stories The Eighth Day of the Earth. Shahriar, did you always know you were going to be a writer? Did your parents know? Was it obvious to everyone?
When I was 14, 15 years old, I was sure that I'm going to be a writer. I would like to be a writer. Although there were times that I lied to my family, okay, I will be an engineer, I'm trying to be a doctor, a physician, something like that. My classmates, they knew that I would like to write stories in the composition hours in high school. My teacher allowed me to write a short story instead of writing about, for instance, example, the autumn or something like that, some stupid subject for compositions. They let me to write the stories. And my classmates, they were good students. They were good in everything, in algebra, in science. I was just good in writing. So at that time, I was start writing short stories and exercising.
You become very well known in your work in Iran for the use of language as not just a tool in storytelling, but as part of the story itself. And this particular look at language and the role of it is something we can see in Hussein Golshiri's works in the 1960s and the stories of his students later on. I know he was a friend and mentor of yours. I don't read Farsi. I don't know a lot of his works, but I know he is iconic. The story is you used to travel from Shiraz to Tehran on Thursdays to meet with him and read your works for him. Tell us a bit about this relationship you had with Golshiri and this collaboration.
When I was start writing, which was my secret, but I was sure that is my job. But I didn't want to show my cheapest stories to hear to anybody, and I was sure that they are not good. After years, I found out that, okay, it's the time that I have a good reader and a good critic to tell me what I am doing. And by chance, I met Dr. Abbas Milani at that time. He was a professor at our faculty, political science.
In Iran?
In Iran, in Tehran University.
So that was mid-70s then, I guess.
Yeah. I gave one of my stories to him, and he was my favorite teacher in the university. And he introduced me to Jian Ghomeshi. And it was the time that I have read many books, as much as I could, and I have thousands of notes about how to write stories and about techniques and forms. So I met Golshiri and I read one of my stories to him, and then he invited me to a sort of session that they had every 2 weeks, as I remember. And there were so good writers and poets on that session with Golshiri. And it was a great sessions. So every few months, when I finished a story, I took a trip from Shiraz to Tehran, 1,000 kilometers. And at afternoon, evenings, I started to read for them, and they were so serious in creating a story. And even Golshiri. And it was a great time for me. Golshiri couldn't teach me anything about techniques. I knew his techniques. But what I learned from Golshiri is thinking about somehow having a second layer in your story, or layers in your story. Something between the lines, something behind the words. I got it from him. He mentioned it to me when I read one of my stories to him. It was about earthquake. And he asked me, okay, it is about this earthquake in a small city around near Shiraz. What else? What could be this earthquake? Not only an earthquake, something else, something that means earthquake, for instance. I got the point at that time. Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
This is fascinating because that's what you're known for. So this is if the tip came from Golshiri, it's a pretty big one in terms of affecting your career. You are known as a writer who writes in layers, where people have to kind of slowly as they're reading your novels, the layers start to fall away, and they learn more about where they're going with the story. So that started with him.
He mentioned me that it is important. When you are writing a story, you don't think about the layers. You shouldn't think about the layers. You shouldn't think about that your story will work as a metaphor or a symbol. You need to write a good story, just a good story. But in the middle of the story, maybe, or at the end of the story, you could feel that this story is pointing out to something else as well. Something even archetypes or prototypes or some event in the history, or maybe somebody in the history, as
Right.
for instance, as Shahriar job by Golshiri is doing it.
Right.
The second layer, it is a prince, but it could be any kind of dictators as well, overthrown dictators as well. So yeah, before it, I was knowing about the layers, but the way that the critics made stories and talk about them, I found out, how deep a story could be. It was so helpful, yeah.
So, in the period after that, the revolution happens, of course, in 1979. And I have to say, learning about you, reading your work, understanding your canon and all that you've done and written about and represented over the years, it's a very interesting turn in your story that you weren't just conscripted for the war. You volunteered to go into the Iran-Iraq war. Tell me about someone who was I'm guessing a self-proclaimed anti-war kind of writer who joins a war effort. What that was like for you?
Yeah. I have a story about it. Don't when you are interviewing a writer, be careful because they will tell you stories.
That's okay. That's okay.
Looking for somebody to listen to their stories. I have a short story about it.
Please.
When I was about 14, 15 years, I made 3 promises. Never smoke a cigarette, never get married, and never go to my army services. It was before the war. I was playing soccer and love playing football, as Iranian used to say. And I was trying to be a rider, and I know that the rider, if I get married, there would be some problem, and not problem, there would be another kind of life. So, but when I was 19 years old, I started smoking 1 pack a day. At age 22, I got married. And then the third promise, it was, I hate to go to doing my army services for 2 years, nothing doing in a base, just marching and marching. But at that time, the war was started, and Iraq army was in my country. They invaded to my country. And I told myself, Shahriyar, it is 2 jobs. The enemy is coming farther and farther. And meanwhile, you are a rider. And there is a war over there. So you have to be there to see, although you hate war, and although I'm sure if there would be a time that I would be face to face with an Iraqi soldier, it couldn't be me to take the first job. But I have to be there. So I introduced myself to army services, and I was lucky. They sent me to a base in Shiraz, and it was my job was teaching soldiers, new soldiers. But I found out that it's not my job. So I wrote a letter to my commander, and I write that I would like to go to the Iran-Iraq front line.
Wow.
And after 2 or 3 letters, he sent me, it is another story, he sent me somewhere to a front line in Kurdistan. I said, I don't go there. I don't want to kill Iranian peoples, particularly Kurds. So I left the army. I escaped. And for months, I wasn't a soldier, living somewhere, not even in my house. And then when I found that unit They moved to Iran-Iraq war field. Then I went back to the base and I said, okay, here we go. Let me go to that front line. Yeah, it is a long story. I'll tell you.
But why were you, forgive me for asking extremely simple questions, but why were you not afraid to go to the front line?
I don't know. I think it is a job for a rider. In the war, as a rider, you can find out the beauties, how much beautiful life is. Maybe I felt it, and I'm not regretful because I found out. You know, when you are living for months, for instance, for officers, it takes about 20 days. There were times that 1 month I couldn't go to a city and have take a bath. And for 1 month you are just walking on the stones of a mountain. You don't know how much pleasure it has when you walk on a flat surface, when you walk on an asphalt or walking on a sidewalk without any stone under your feet. It's so simple. It is a simple example.
It's so remarkable, this, because, first of all, it's counterintuitive. You wouldn't think that the writer would say that going to the front lines of a war is where the writer should be, but especially, you're not a journalist. You write fiction, you write stories, but this is I'm consistent now through this interview, because when I asked you about the pandemic, you also said the one problem with it is I can't get out there and be part of. You see being a writer as needing to see and experience and be in the middle of things, right?
It was my style of writing to be here and there, everywhere that there was a disaster or people are suffering.
It's a bit masochistic, though, to say, well, I'm going to go to involve myself in horrible things so that I can be so that I have, so that I can, it'll, benefit my writing.
Yeah, it is something. It is on the other hand, it is, but it was the philosophy of my writing that although I'm a formalist, although I think writing a story is not in just language and making writing in a beautiful language, but the subject of a story, it shouldn't come from living in apartment, in isolation situation. I called it the apartment stories. I'm trying to write about it. The stories that they are writing in his apartment and the writer is just living in an apartment, not outside.
Right.
There was an earthquake on the north part of Iran, in Rudbar and the other cities. 80,000 people died and that night.
Yes.
I went there, and it wasn't easy. When I was at war, I saw the ruined cities.
But Shahriar, so much of what you write about is love. I
went to the Rudbar. It was more tragic for me than a city that it was ruined in the war. The ruins of earthquake was so more sad for me, make me more sad, melancholy, and even give me a sort of absurdness. Life is so absurd in earthquake, So it was so hard for me, but I write about it in my novel, The Courage of Love. Okay.
Well, I was going to say how there's romance, there's unrequited love, but there's love in a lot of what you write. How do we reconcile that with the experiences of going to see an earthquake or the front lines of a war or these kind of traumatic experiences?
Yeah. When you're at the war, you even miss the colors, because everything is at the color of the ground, the soil, even our clothes. Your mind is looking for instance, a beautiful red shoe of a girl, or the color of the curtains of a window. You miss these things. So at that time, even you feel that, oh, how many loves, how many opportunities of being a lover or being loved I have missed. And you think about love. You feel how much important love is. Just in the heart of darkness of the world, in the heart of the violence of the world, you feel the love, how much precious it is. And not only in the novel, The Courage of Love, even in Moonbrow or Mahpishani or Aqrab Kishi in Farsi, it is war and love, war and love.
Yes, yeah. It is so beautiful what you've just said, and it makes so much sense. And yet I don't know that I've ever thought about it in that way. That when things are the darkest, and even in the way you're describing it in terms of black and white, is when your appreciation for love and the colors of love would be the most powerful.
Yeah.
You know, if we're talking about horrible experiences, let me ask you about that experience on the bus that you referenced a few minutes back. I mean, as the 1980s go on, you start to become a writer and a well-known writer by the late 80s and into the early 90s. Then you do get banned, you get censored. Nevertheless, you're known in Iran, and you are one of the 21 writers who ends up on this bus en route to a poetry conference in Armenia in the summer of 1996. And there was this unsuccessful attempt to kill the busload of all of you at 2 in the morning while most of the passengers were sleeping, when the driver of the bus, as I understand it, attempts to steer it off the cliff near the Hadron Pass. This is now an infamous story. You were there. That could have been you. That could have been the end. How did that traumatic event affect you, Shahriar?
It was so insulting for me. That was the first feeling that I had, that I too much insulted. They insulting me as a human being. The fear of death was over there. Okay, everybody has it. But I felt that they were going to kill us like lambs. You know, before we started the trip, Mr. Kushan called me. I was living in Shiraz, and called me that there is a plan to go to Armenia, and we are 20 of us, and you will be one of them. I asked him, are you sure what are we going to do? Do you think that on the way a big truck comes to us and open its hug us as a welcome? He said, no, you think you're just thinking about
conspiracy theory.
So I thought that they are living in Tehran. Golshiri is there. He checked with Armenian embassy, and the other writers are there, so they knew better than me. So, we started the trip, and one of us, he wasn't on the trip, on the bus, but he told us, they will send you, all of you, to the depth of the valley. Don't take this trip. Huh. But we didn't listen to it. Because I felt so insulted, even from myself. We wasn't enough smart at that time. When we got in the bus, because one of my friends and we used to take buses from Shiraz to Tehran for a long distance trip, 1,000 kilometers. We knew that each bus should have 2 drivers and some help, a young person that helped them, may help them to stay awake. But this was does just have one driver. We didn't see this sign as well. We took the bus. And I told to my friend, Mr. Tufan, so let's make let's observe this driver. I'm sure that he will fall asleep at the middle of the midnight.
Can I just ask you a question first, though? Why didn't you believe all the warnings? I mean,
I have no idea.
You've already been banned, right? You'd been banned. You'd been censored.
No. We could talk about it when we were sitting around, but we were so happy. It was the first time that a group of riders, the group of us, could be together in a bus and going outside of Iran. It was so good for me. We were so happy that at last we could be together after years that we were being censored and sitting in our cities here and there and being without any association of riders. That happiness had blinded us.
Uh-huh.
Tufan and I, my friend and I, we talk about that each time one of us sit beside the driver and watch him and not let him to fall asleep. At that time, it was Mr. Tufan watch, and at the end of a bus, I saw that he turned the rear toward the valley and jump out. And that time I found out that it is a turtle. So Tufan grabbed the wheel. I got the handbrake, and I saw how the bus driver is using it. And I did it, and the bus stopped at the edge of the valley, at the edge of a cliff it was.
Wow.
And if we couldn't even go out from the passenger's door, it was open to the mouth of the valley. So we get out from the driver door at that time.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to me that for the next 10 years, after you've had this attempt on your life, after you were obviously no friend of the regime, after for the next few years there's more killings of writers and intellectuals known as the chain murders of Iran, you choose to stay in Iran. You didn't leave at that point. Why not?
Yeah, I was sure that it is my house. It is my language is my house. It's my home. According to one of the Golshiri's phrase, he said that my language is my home. So I was there, and I took some trips, and I saw it was a thought at that time to invite us to European countries, and my family was there, my house was there. And my writing was working well at that time. No matter if I could find out the chance to write, to publish or not. The point was that I could write well. It was a time that I felt that Iran is going to be changed. I couldn't live among people at that time. I didn't talk about it so much. I didn't write about it. But at that time, I felt that it seems that there is no place for me. So it was a good chance for me to being outside of Iran for 9 months because of Brown University fellowship.
Is this in 2006 now?
Yeah, it was 2006.
Yeah. But just before that, let me just ask you, first of all, in terms of before we leave the horrible terrorist bus incident, how did that affect you? Were you in the aftermath of that, when you returned to, I don't know where you returned to, Shiraz or Tehran? Are you a changed person? Do you suddenly feel more threatened, or were you able to write after that? Tell me how the bus incident affects you.
Yeah, of course, it changed somehow my mind. But as you know, I was felt the death in the war. I watched the death and the earthquakes here and there. But that experience was something new. What made me suffer is that we were like lambs, and so
But that's not you're not being fair to yourself. That sounds like you're blaming
yeah, of course
yourself.
that.
I mean,
Of course it's that. I blame myself.
but you couldn't
When I
have.
say like a lamb, I mean both of them. On the other side, they were killing us like lamb. They were trying to kill us like lamb, and we were going there like lambs out there. Maybe it was a lesson from war for me. Don't give up. It's not your job. You have to fight. So I started to write. After a few months, after 1-2 months later, I started writing. Maybe sadder, a little bit anxiety because I always had this such a fear that they storm at my house and take my computer and my notes and whatever that I have written on papers on the before I had a computer.
Well, you not only keep writing in this period, you write, first of all, you write arguably your most well-known book in Iran, Violet Orient. This becomes the quintessential work of Shahriyar Mandanipour. As you've said, by the early 2000s, you are well known, you're getting published, you have a career in Iran, you care deeply about literature in Iran. You've been the chief editor of Thursday Evening, which is one of the best and most specialized literary and intellectual magazines of its time. So what was the precipitant to leave Iran in 2006 then? After all of this, if you stayed through the attempts on your life, through being banned and censored, through the war and the earthquakes, what is it that finally makes you feel, as you said a few moments ago, like you really have no place in Iran anymore?
Yeah, at that time we thought that, this regime, since they came to the power. Each year, Iranians they have such a hope that next year they wouldn't be on the power. We had hope at that time, but before 2006, I felt that I couldn't find enough good friends around me. I couldn't find even enough good people that I can trust them. And I need to go outside I came to Brown for 9 months. I didn't manage to stay in the United States for a long time. I just came outside for 9 months, being outside of Iran, watching my country from outside of that, and take a rest and get back to Iran and start writing and trying to publish my works. It was my plan. But then when I came to Brown, and then there were some invitations here and there. And at that time, censorship in Iran was in the most ridiculous, stupidity situation. It was so much stupid at that time. And when I have a talk, for instance, in UCLA or Stanford, I felt that I shouldn't talk like when I was in Iran. I shouldn't talk like a writer who is talking about censorship from inside of Iran. Right now, the people will ask me why you are talking just the same as you were there. Right now, you are free to talk. You can talk. So I raised my voice louder and louder against censorship. And after 9 months, my friends told me you better not to get back home. And Brown University, they helped me to stay 6 months more there. Then I got a fellowship at Harvard. And then, yeah, I stayed here. I stayed in the United States and started writing.
Let me ask you about the effects of censorship, because the theme of censorship, I mean, it's obvious in Censoring an Iranian Love Story. It's clear there. But there's also subtext of censorship in Moonbrow, your more recent book. And it's a subject that you have written about quite a bit. Obviously, as we've talked about throughout this interview, you've been censored. You've been silenced in Iran at different periods. I wonder how it affects you as a writer. I mean, do you get to a place where you are affected in the moment of creation, where you're watching what you write as you create, almost anticipating that there's going to be censorship, even though you're now in California or at Brown or in the West? Does it affect your psyche still as a writer?
No, after these years, I don't think so. Particularly in Moonbrow or Aqrab Keshi in Farsi, it was published. At last, it published in Persian.
Oh, it did get published in Farsi, huh? I thought it wasn't published in Farsi yet.
Yeah, right now, it's published in London. The people can order it from the publisher and they receive it.
Did Censoring an Iranian Love Story ever come out in Iran? I don't think so, right? That one's not.
Not yet.
Uh-huh.
After Moonbrow, that in Persian, I have chosen the title that I loved. Aqrab Keshi, Smoking a Scorpion. This is the first title that I thought about this novel. But when its English version was going to being published, my agent and the publisher asked me to choose another title. In English, you don't have any term or word for Mahpishuni. Mahpishuni means a girl that there is a crescent of the moon on her forehead.
Yeah, it's close with Moonbrow, but I didn't know that that's what you meant until, to be honest, I read a review where somebody said that that's what you were saying with Moonbrow. I was wondering how the title actually fits. It's interesting that you're telling me now. But we were talking about censorship. So you're saying by Moonbrow, you don't feel any worries about that at this point?
No worries about it. And but I'm sure that maybe it makes some more problem for me in Iran, for my home or my family. But fortunately, not yet. I write as in the way that I would like to write. And one point I would like to tell you, when I started writing Moonbrow or Aqrab Keshi, Smoking a Scorpion, 3 times. When I was in Iran, there were times that I knew that what I am going to write, it will be censored, and there is no chance to be published, that it would be published. But I write some short stories and even a novel. One of them was Death's novel. 2 times in Iran, when I was in Iran, I started writing this novel, and I couldn't continue writing because I felt that something is wrong in the form of the story. It doesn't work well. In the second writing, after 60 pages writing, I felt again that no, it's not the form of my novel. I changed the point of view, but it doesn't work well. I think I was in Berlin that I got the idea that the narrator of this novel should be 2 angels that, according to religious narrations, they are sitting on our shoulders and write our good deed and bad deeds. So I found out that they are good narrators for this novel. And then the writing works very well in this new form of narration.
I love it. I'm going to get to the 2 angels actually before the end of the interview. But first of all, I mean, I love that you are writing with Moonbrow and with Censoring an Iranian Love Story. You're actually writing with the knowledge that this is going to be translated into English and a number of other languages. But it also occurs to me, I remember seeing you doing an interview somewhere where you said something like, I can't remember which book it was. I'm guessing it was Censoring an Iranian Love Story. It was translated into Korean, and you were looking at the book and you don't even know how to hold the book, like which way to, you don't know how to read Korean, you know? And I think about how much responsibility that therefore puts on the shoulders of the translator. You have to, since you can't, I mean, I guess with the English you can read it, but if it's being translated in these different languages, and so much of what you, in particular, Shahriyar Mandanipour, does is about the language, is about the way you tell the story. You have to really trust these translators to get it right. Is that hard for you?
Yeah, of course. Fortunately, I have a good translator, Miss Sarah Khalili. She translates my source to English. I trust her so much because after years we could understand our languages, and there are times that she knew even the tone of my stories, the tone of the prose, and how to transfer them to the English. But I have no hand. I don't have any chance to judge for instance, the German translation or French translation or other languages translation. I just trust my agent. It is a good agent in New York, and he works with good publishers in Europe for years. So, as I understood, he worked. The publishers they have chosen good translators. For instance, right now I know the German translation is okay, it's good, but yeah, I don't have any even right to ask them to change something, particularly that I don't know the French.
The German book could be about, it could be a novel about fishing, and you wouldn't know.
Yeah, and the point I made a joke about it that I don't know if the translator write his story.
That's right.
That's my story. How can I find it
That's
out?
right. How about this? If it does well in those territories, it's your story. If it does poorly, it must be the wrong story they told. I should just ask you, because I do know that a few years ago you had vowed to only publish these novels, the ones that have been published in English, in Farsi when you are able to return to Iran. So I'm guessing you changed that edict. You're okay with them being published because you're not returning to Iran anytime soon, right?
Yeah, at that time, year by year, I was hopeful that something would happen in Iran and I can get back home. But it didn't happen. So right now I'm here, and like all other Iranians, I hope, every day I have such a hope that for Iran. But I tried not to dying for depression. If you have depression, it means that you are living for the past. If you are anxiety, it means that you are living for the future. If you have both of them, it means that you are living in Iran. So I think each writer has a sort of depression. But I try not to be, it defeated me. I try not to give up. And writing saved my life in many times.
Well, before I let you go, and you've been so generous to, یعنی خیلی وقت الان 1.5 ساعت you've been so kind. Thank you for the time you've given us. But let me, before I do let you go, ask you a little bit about politics and about being the writer in exile now. And I mean, you've said before that you're not a political person. You've said, I study political science, and maybe because I know something about politics, I hate politics. But the characters in your books, I think about the protagonists of both Censoring an Iranian Love Story and Moonbrow, among others. They are disaffected activists. They are political. They also only find love after leaving political struggles behind. Can you talk a bit about the relationship that you feel between politics and love, and the responsibility you may feel in the real world to Iranian people and wanting change there in your writing?
Particularly when you are living in a country like Iran, or living in under a sort of dictatorship in other countries, each kind of a story that you would write, it would be political, because the dictator would like you write as he wants, as he ordered, as he going to produce the governmental riders,
right?
His riders. If you couldn't be one of them, if you choose that you don't want to be a governmental rider, so-called riders, then everything that you will write in literature, it should be censored, and it would be against the regime, no matter what are you writing about. If you even write a love story, if you even write about a tree, that it is in the spring, if you write that there is a tree that it is in the springtime, they will say, okay, you mean that the revolution, as an example, it means that that tree is the tree of the revolution. If you write that it is at autumn time and its leaves are getting gray and they're getting yellow and they are falling, yeah, you mean it means that the regime is falling down. You mean everything that you write in pure literature, not that kind of governmental literature, so-called governmental literature. So that one is dangerous for them.
So, Yanni, you're in a bit of a cage. Whether you want, whether you like it or not, whatever you write is going to be considered political on some level or another.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, political.
But Shahriar, on the one hand, it's clearly frustrating for you, or it would be for anyone, that no matter what you write, even as you say, if you write a children's story about a balloon, the balloon will be seen as an allegory for the regime in Iran or something if it bursts, etc. But at the same time, I suspect you probably feel pressure, or you may have experienced this from the other side, which is people in the diaspora, others in exile, who believe that any artist should be speaking out, and that it is your duty somehow to be political and to, speak out against this regime. Do you feel that kind of pressure?
I tried not to feel such a pressure, although every day I start my day with reading for years. It is I used to it. It is my habit that every day, first of all, I open my computer and read the news about Iran. And it's so, it's so just sad and frustrating news. And it made all my day dark enough.
Yeah.
I think it is, as I'm an Iranian, it's my duty to read about my country and the people, and what's going on there. But in writing, I don't believe about any engagement, as Jean-Paul Sartre said, or any commitment as ideological writing. No, I don't believe in these things. It came to my mind. There are times that I found, for instance, the characters of my stories that they were in the war. And when they are so alive in my mind, so I prefer to write about them, because it has a deep influence in my mind. The war, the earthquake, and this suffering of people, the suffer of people.
Let me ask you about a character who was in the war, Amir in Moonbrow. He's missing his left arm, which we understand he lost in the Iran-Iraq war. You've talked about how that missing left arm is allegorical, that it can be about the Iranian people. How do you see us as having lost our left arm, those of us of Iranian descent? What does it represent for you?
When I was writing that novel, for me, it was just losing one arm, nothing else. I didn't think that it could be a metaphor or could be a symbol. But after writing, it came to my mind that the Shahriyar, it means that as well. It means that Iran has lost his left hand. The left hand that the sign of love and family could be on it, the ring. And the other meanings, they came after you finish writing the novel. But at that time, I just wanted to write about a young Iranian person, a lieutenant. He was a watcher, and right now he has just the dreams and nightmares about putting the ring in the hand of a girl.
Yeah.
He couldn't see the face of that girl. Who was there? Where did I do that? Because he lost, because of a mortal shell wave, he lost a part of his mind,
yes,
his memory. And he said, there are things that I remember, but I'm not sure if I imagine them as a memory or they are really my memory. So it was what I want to write about it. I didn't plan to write against war. No, I just want to write about that love in the wartime. But the subject will force you or will guide you to write about some scene about the war as well. And they came to my mind. For instance, at the beginning of the story, I couldn't imagine that such a scene I will write. There is an Iraqi soldier that is just, he was burnt.
Yeah.
And he's like, his body would just turn to a sort of coal.
By the way, you write quite graphically too in some of these scenes. Yeah.
And the Amir, the first character of the novel, or the protagonist of the novel, remember a scene from the revolution when they burned, they call them prostitutes. They burned one of them and put her burnt body on a door and walking around the streets.
Yes.
As a sort of victory of revolution. It was. I saw that picture many years ago, and it was. I wanted to cry because for that woman, it was so shameful. All the faces of that people are so shameful. I felt ashamed that my faces look like them as well. I'm walking on my feet like them. It was so shameful that they burn a woman, or such a woman like that, as the victory of revolution, and then show it walking march on the street and that the people watch it. But when I was writing that novel, when I reached to that scene about writing about that burnt Iraqi soldier, then that picture came to my mind. I didn't plan to make a parallel between them, but it came to my mind. It is the way that writing works. I believe that when you are writing, a part of your writing, it comes from your subconscious. and it happens in many times in writing. So it made it political. At that time, it was just a war story.
Yes.
But when it got parallel with a burned body of a prostitute, it would be so political.
I should mention to anybody who's listening to this and who reads predominantly in English, both Censoring an Iranian Love Story and Moonbrow are available. You can get them around the world in English, actually in a number of other languages as well. And I really recommend these books to you. I think a lot of people who may have read you in Farsi know that those books are available as well. But these books are a treasure. It has been so insightful getting to talk to you and also to experience your warmth. I want to end with a question. I said I would get back to the angels, and you mentioned that in Moonbrow there's two angels, as there is in I'm not sure if it's an Iranian tradition or Islamic tradition, but there's the angel on one shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder, and they're the writers of Moonbrow. They take us through, or the narrators. But one of them is imploring someone to do good deeds, and the other one encouraging bad deeds. And I thought I would ask you as a final question, Shahriar, given that you probably have the two angels, one on either shoulder, what is the one that is encouraging you to do bad deeds, imploring you to do? And what is the one that is encouraging you to do good deeds, telling you to do?
Oh, at the middle of our conversation, I was sure that you will ask me such a smart question because you asked me very good questions. I was sure that at the end you will ask me this hard question. It is so political. Yes. There is no define for good deeds and bad deeds. First of all, I decided that the left shoulder angel will write such a not bad deeds, so much personal things like love making, sex, or anger, or hate. And the other one who could write all those things, those deeds, in other prose, in another kind of prose, a sort of maybe poetical prose, or a sort of archaic prose even. The difference between of them is just their proses. This was my first rule. Not which kind of deed are good, which kind of deed are bad. I didn't the novel in this way.
I'm not talking about the novel anymore. This is my twist on it for you.
Yeah.
It was my way of asking you where you think you want to go next on your journey. Tell me where, as we end off, where you feel like you're at. Are you content with being if one can feel content in an exilic condition, but content with where you are in California now in doing the things you do, and with continuing to write as you do, or is there a next step to the journey that you've been thinking of that you would share with us?
Yeah, somehow I resigned from my job teaching at Tough University. It was a great university. I had a good situation for teaching with the students. But the way that I must live in a room, my income was so low and I couldn't live with it. And so I said, I can't do it anymore. And I want to write, find a way just to sit someplace and just write, because I'm sure that I won't have a long life. So I try to manage my life in LA and try to find a way of living. I was sure that I couldn't find a job in, for instance, California universities. Not even teaching creative writing, not even teaching Persian literature, or even I have taught for 2 years. I taught at Brown University the new wave in Iranian cinema as well. But I was sure that I couldn't find a job. They won't give me a job. It is another story. They don't like such a person like me over there, it seems, in Iranian studies departments here and there.
Sorry, why don't they like a person like you?
Yeah, I think I feel it that they don't like.
No, but why? Why don't they like? What is it about you?
Another story. It is a long story.
Okay.
Let's censor it.
Okay.
Now, I try to have some workshops. It's good. Right now, I have 2 workshops with around 17 students from all over the world. And the people from Iran, they are young and I love them. They are so smart. They read more than I expected. They read the novels more than I expected. And I enjoy the teaching and working with them. I call it just workshop, not a class.
If the politics changed, if the government, if the regime, whatever you want to call them, ends up changing in Iran, would you see yourself moving back there?
Not so much. No, I'm outside of Iran, and it is it is online booking workshop. But talking with young people of Iran, from Iran, I'm learning from them as well. Give me a sort of sense that maybe right now I'm Isfahan and I'm talking with a young person, a young writer in Isfahan, but not. It is not so strong. I feel that I am outside of Iran and I am outsider somehow.
Shiraz is in the past now.
Yeah, Shiraz is in the past.
Shahriyar Mandanipour, I once again thank you so much. خیلی متشکرم. I really appreciate all of us on this program do the time that you've first of all that you came on the program, and then the amount of time that you've given, the stories you've told, the difficult ones and the funny ones, and the wisdom you've shared. Thank you for this. I hope this COVID situation will end so that you can get out there and do what a writer does, which apparently is go into horrible war zones and earthquakes, but also so that you can come visit us in Canada and so that we can see you before too long. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your question. Were good.
Thank you.
My right angel is telling you that I really enjoy the conversation with you.
Well, I'm not going to ask what the left angel is telling you. I'll stick with the right angel. خیلی متشکرم. Bye-bye. Thank you. خداحافظ.
خداحافظ.
Shahriyar Mandanipour, one of the most accomplished and successful writers of contemporary Iranian literature. His most recent novel is entitled Moonbrow. Shahriyar Mandanipour joined us from Berkeley, California today. Roqe Team reassembling here. Microphones on. Captain Reza Groovy Shaya and the fabulous Keon. Thoughts on Shahriyar Mandanipour, dear Shaya?
I rather to not say anything. I'm still digesting some words that he says, and I love the word that it's the writer's job to. It's wow.
That was a big takeaway for me for sure. There's the story of the bus. There's his whole journey, all of that. But the idea that I needed to go to the front lines of a war because that's where the writer should be. That it's so counterintuitive, and yet it makes so much sense. The other thing I just loved was his meditation on love. that you have to go to you have to be if you put yourself in the worst situations, that's when you really realize what love is and how important it is. And I actually really, while he was saying it, I was processing, and if I think about it now, the lowest points in my life, the things I've been through, it's love that is the most important thing that I've found or recognized in those moments, whether it's family or friends or whatever. Captain Reza?
Two things that really resonated with me with him. One was obviously him putting himself in the heart of danger to write about it, which really reminded me of Hunter S. Thompson. I mean, he was a sports journalist, but then I don't know if you read Gonzo, but
sure,
he was that kind of person. I mean, a little bit more outrageous and crazy, but he would do that as well as a method writer. Essentially, put himself in that situation to write about it. And the other thing that I was actually laughing out loud when he said that, it was like, if you have depression, you're living in the past. If you have anxiety, in the future. If you have both, you're living in Iran. And like you hit the nail in the head, man. That was amazing.
That's saying I'm gonna carry that with
100%.
me. 100%. Yeah.
Nobody analyzed it for me.
Brilliant. Yeah.
That was great.
Fabulous. Keon?
You know, he made me appreciate the art of writing, so much more creative writing, and artists in general. The fact that he put himself in those positions just to feel things that would kind of incite him to write beautiful stories. And actually, he made me realize how much we take for granted in the West, just to have the ability to write whatever we want and not be thrown in jail for it. So that's something we need to really value. And it brings up the topic of censorship. It's something that's even coming up in the West now. So I think we need to guard it with our lives.
But it's such an interesting twist on the way we traditionally see a writer. Because, because my question in the beginning, it was, it's COVID, so great for you, right? You're sitting and writing, and we've even had a couple of artists who've said that, musicians or composers, whatever, say, it hasn't been so bad for me. I'm at home and write. And you have this idea of this elevated sense of an artist that is out in a cabin somewhere in a field and can just write, and that would be their happy place, to be away from everything. And he's saying, actually, I need to be out in the middle of things to find my inspiration and my muse to be able to write. It makes so much sense, but again, it feels counterintuitive.
It's beautiful.
And something was very educational for me was that he says for writing a story, you have to only write a good story. Don't think of layers. I mean, I translated for example, in music, you have to write a good music. Don't think of layers of it.
Right. Yeah. That's a question for creators in general. Yes. How cerebral are you? How much are you thinking about what you're creating while you create it, rather than just let yourself create?
Yes.
How much self-editing are you doing? Also, I should just say, for those people who aren't of a certain age and didn't grow up in Iran, the bus story is not something that's at the forefront of our minds. I'd heard about it, obviously, but going back into the details of it, did you know about this?
I had no idea, but I love the way he described it. He was like, I felt more insulted that I felt like they were treating us like lambs, and I put myself in his position. Yeah, it's like to discount their lives so easily, to just.
And he says everyone's lambs. They're lambs and we're lambs. They're following what we're doing. But again, Iranians who live in Iran or who are of a certain age will know this story. But it is just so incredibly horrible and so cruel, this notion that in one swath we're going to just take out an entire cohort of amazingly intelligent, creative, artistic people, presumably because they represent dissenting voices. It is so horrific, and it never stops being shocking. I know I say this a lot, but the lengths that the Iranian authorities will have gone to in the last 40 years to shut down dissent and to do this to an entire creative class, it's incredibly disheartening.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that story, actually. That caught me by.
You didn't know that?
No,
huh?
I had no idea.
The chain gang, and then there are murders after that too. There's chain gang murders, which are infamous, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point on the show. But yeah. Anyway, what a pleasure it was to have him on, and I sort of said it during the interview, but having just read Moonbrow, if you have a chance to, there are a couple of books that are only going to soon be available in Farsi. They haven't even been put out in Farsi there, but they are translated into English. He wrote them with the intention of them being translated into English, and they're well worth reading. Censoring and Running Love Story and Moonbrow. If you have the chance, you can find them on wherever you find your books, and they're worth checking out. All right. It is Monday. Let's get to one of our favorite segments. She's the person behind the popular Inglisi Farsi Instagram page, but as importantly, she's the Persian priestess of proverbs, the Australian sage of sayings, the wondrous woman of words, our resident Roqe wordsmith, and she joins us right now from Australia. She is Mona from Melbourne. Hello, Mona.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good. How's Australia doing?
We're good. Always good. As my husband says, always good.
What are you bestowing upon our imaginations today?
Today's a proverb, so you'll be happy to hear this week is a proverb.
Okay. And how do you want to set it up for us?
So I'll give you some clues and see if you guys can guess. And Shahriar and Reza, please feel free to jump in on this as well, if we can't.
I like that you've just given up on me and Keelan. It's just like Shahriar and Reza.
I guess
So
it's a hard one
complicated,
today.
you guys
Actually, we've
don't
got
even
Ponta
bother.
on the line here too, so she might be able to guess. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh, give us some more insight. Okay. Well, this proverb also speaks of the cycle of life, from life to death and death to life. It gives us a valuable life lesson that even in the best situations, they have their downsides. So it follows, therefore, that even in bad situations, we have positive sides. So it's really talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So any ideas about
Okay,
what
so even
this
in
proverb
good
could be?
situations, there can be bad.
Mm-hmm.
Geez, that could be a lot of things.
This too shall pass.
This too shall
No, that was last week.
These
So
two
I
I'll
shall-
give you some hints.
Okay.
So it's related to flowers, and specifically one flower that we see a lot in poetry and proverbs.
The only thing I've heard is as har golye bukon, which is not the best meaning. Yeah, it's a terrible thing to say to a son or man in general.
I never heard that. As har
What?
golye bukon?
Like I've heard like a father
everything?
telling his son as har son, sample every flower. By
Oh,
flower
like,
meaning every
be a
girl,
serial
which
dater.
is terrible.
Okay.
But no, it's
گل
definitely not.
بیخار خداست, something like that.
No, not quite.
So she said a familiar flower. So a flower that ends up in a lot of poetry. So it's a rose? A rose?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, there are a lot
A rose.
related to the rose.
Proverb related
Have you got
to
any?
a rose, and there's good and bad.
They have thorns. Something about roses and thorns.
Yes.
Something.
Yes.
Every rose has a thorn. Every
Something
rose,
like that?
Yes.
every rose has
we
a
got
thorn.
it. We cracked the
And,
case.
and so, what's
We
the
have that in
Persian?
Farsi.
So gol و خار همیشه با هم است. So it links in with there's no rose without a thorn.
Oh. So, Shai, have you heard that?
گل و خار همیشه با همن. I'm looking for the poetic way of saying that.
I never heard that before.
Ponta the artist,
Oh,
have
really?
you heard that?
Yes, but I'm looking for the همین شعریشو میخوام آره.
So you wouldn't say it this way. You wouldn't say Gol
Well, there's
Bakhar
actually a few that talk about different sort of synonyms related. So there's no treasure without snakes and no flower with thorns.
But this is one that's very much I would imagine because we have that in English. Every rose has its thorns. It's kind of like a way of saying nothing is perfect. You're going to have your ups and downs. So I guess you've discovered that there's versions of this in Farsi and in English and presumably in other languages.
Yes, in a few other cultures as well. So among the Jews, Christians, and Muslims in the Middle Ages, the rose with its proverbial thorns was a potent symbol of love. It's got the ephemeral pleasures as well as its hidden pains. So I did some research, and according to Ambrose, who is a church father in Milan, he lived in the 4th century, roses first grew in the Garden of Eden, and those first roses were entirely without thorns. Only after Adam and Eve disobeyed God and were expelled from the garden did these blossoms acquire their prickly defenses. And these rose blossoms, with their beauty and aroma, serve as an enduring reminders of paradise, even as roses' thorns remind us that paradise has been lost. According to Ambrose, the Virgin Mary is the rose without the thorns. Born free of original sin, she was free of the thorns and the sins that had pricked humankind since Eve ate from the apple. So this idea of imperfection is expressed, teaching the relationship of, having the good with the bad, and we have to accept that everything has its flaws.
Right.
Wow.
See, Shia, this is why you should not disobey God.
I've committed a lot of sins over the weekend. I got to tell you that.
Did you find the Persian saying first, the Persian proverb, and work backwards? How did you think of this week?
Well, it's interesting because there is I've got 2 or 3 texts that have hundreds of proverbs in it, and sometimes something just jumps out at me. And this week, I felt like this one really jumped out at me because, in life we have to take the good with the bad, and sometimes we expect things to be smooth sailing. But, there's inevitably bumps and speed bumps along the way. So normally I find a proverb that speaks to me and then work backwards from there.
So what's the best way to say this in Farsi?
So gol va khar hamishe ba ham ast.
You always get the rose and the thorns together.
Always together, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And how would we apply that? I guess that would be like...
I would... the easiest way to apply that, I think, is if you see a beautiful woman, for example, you're like, every beautiful woman has its flaws,
A
I
beautiful
suppose.
woman who's psychotic.
Yeah, exactly.
Then
Those
yes.
are the thorns.
Because there's got to be
don't
negative.
think there's no thorns, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And let that be a lesson to you about the doctor as well. Just because he's a handsome doctor.
I've discovered the thorns, don't you worry. I'll accept the thorns.
Well, I was listening to your last segment and you were talking about Persian mums. And we all love our Persian mums, but we got to take them with a pinch of exaggeration.
yes.
There are no thorns in my loving mom. Please, let's have a sense of decorum here.
There is no mom in my loving thorn. Oh, I'm joking. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mona. Once again, we've learned something. And it was great to hear the history of that too. Although the history is, I guess, in a lot of cases, proverbs are steeped in religion, right? That's where they emerge from. So it makes sense that this is, you got to go back to the Garden of Eden and and the Lord.
Indeed.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Thanks for having me.
Talk to you next week. Take care of yourself. That's Mona from Melbourne.
Bye, Mona.
Bye. Khudafiz.
Find her page at Englisi Farsi on Instagram. Right. It is still Monday, and that means it is time for Letters of the Week. Oh.
Yeah.
Reza does that for everything.
I feel like this should be like our Friday segment heading into the weekend.
Something to end off.
Too cheerful. People are gonna curse us.
All right, Kian. I know you got a proverbial big bag of letters to get through.
So last week on episode 79, we had Iranian kickboxing champion, entrepreneur, and social media influencer Ahmad Moin Shirazi, aka Picasso Moin. So he shared his life story, his relationship with his religious father, and his harrowing escape from Iran after being sentenced, along with his wife, to 16 years in prison for photos they had posted on Instagram. So as I mentioned earlier, we got a lot of mail on this interview.
This is Picasso. Yeah, he certainly created a stir.
I guess he's controversial.
Lots of streams, lots of people listening to it, lots of people watching it, and we appreciate that. And I guess we got a lot of feedback.
I guess it's expected. He's the son of an Akhund, so already people have their prejudices.
And he's
against
also
that.
a very, very significant social media influencer. He's got a devoted fan base. He's got a big set. A lot of people around the world who follow him and adore him. So I guess we heard from both.
Yeah, and I'll share them with you.
All right.
So might I add, the bulk of them are on Instagram. He has a lot of followers on Instagram. So starting with Dr. Sarina, that's her username on Instagram.
And by the way, we should mention that we get a lot of postings and mail and stuff. You're just picking a handful of them. We
Yes.
can't read everything that everybody sends.
Of course. We'd
but,
be here all day.
Yeah, but thank you. If the letter doesn't get read or your post doesn't get read, doesn't mean we don't appreciate it. We really, really like this kind of interaction. Good, bad, ugly, lauding, whatever you send us, we appreciate it.
So we have Dr. Sarina wrote, Misla Hamisha, good job, Jian. Well, that was nice.
Thank you.
Now, the next one isn't, it's a different tone. Shabnam Asar wrote, so disappointed. You didn't do any research?
Okay.
And then Sadaf Dargahi wrote, even Jian didn't sound interested in the conversation. He usually sounds more excited when he talks to the diaspora people. His voice sounded more excited when Melbourne Mona came on. Is it only me who felt this way?
That's interesting. I mean, I'm always excited when Mona from Melbourne comes on, and so that part's true. I thought I was engaged with Picasso. Absolutely. Maybe I think people are hearing what they want to hear. Maybe a little bit there.
I guess so. And then we have Parastu, last name listed as Fah, wrote, I enjoy listening to your talk show. Picasso, I always wish you and your family the best. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
And then next up we have Mehdi Sidaqati wrote, we're so happy for you, Picasso. You can finally speak in a free space. Next up we have Ali Khatami, who, he took a different tone. He wrote, I'm sure you weren't aware, but he never was a champion. He is an Aghazadeh, and that means son of Akhund, I believe, and not an entrepreneur. All his salary is from businesses in Iran, and he says he escaped. Who can escape from Iran when sentenced to 16 years in prison with all that money? Please do some research about your guests. I hope next guest is not Amir Tatalu or Hassan Aghamiri. I'm sure if you interview yourselves, it's better than interviewing these fake champions living with the money of poor people of Iran.
Funny, next week it's an entire week special with Tatalu. So. Aghazadeh, you want to maybe give us the exact what it really actually means? Shai, go ahead.
Yes, Aghazadeh is a person, is a son of a person who works in government and not especially Akhund. You can son of an oligarch essentially.
Got it. Yeah.
But it's interesting. Whenever we bring somebody on, which some people don't like, which is every episode, there's always one group or another doesn't like somebody who we brought on. They say, do your research. It's like, well, as I was introducing Picasso, I said, he's controversial, and I did ask him about some of the things that have caused some controversy. But of course, we want to bring in a real wide swath of people, the balance over time. And so I suspect if somebody's on this week that you don't like, next week there'll be somebody that you do like, and somebody else won't like. But always appreciate the feedback.
Every rose has its thorns.
Right. You see? Excellent application, nice. Keon. Young Keon.
Nice.
So next we have Gulshan Sajad wrote, wow, such an amazing life story. Next up we have username 12edu345 says, Roqe, you disappointed me. Why have you interviewed this man? He's a big liar. Everybody knows that he and his wife are Aghazadeh and are disgusting people.
Oh boy.
Oof. All right, then we have Mehdi Hushmand wrote, as Picasso's friend, I thank you so much for sharing his story. He has one of the kindest hearts. Such a human and down-to-earth person. Okay. And then Rasinol Diaries, that's a username, wrote, the part where he was talking about his wife Shabnam and how she inspired him to win another tournament after 4 years. Aww. And then Marzieh Hadeh wrote, I'm a huge fan of Picasso and his lovely family. To me, they're nothing but positivity, love, care, and kindness. I'm also a big fan of their awesome workout routine and healthy lifestyles. Although I knew their story, I really enjoyed listening to this interview. Kudos to the Roqe team to put this interview together.
It's amazing how wildly varying the responses are, huh?
Yeah.
So it's really it's really love-hate. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of, there doesn't seem to be a lot of nuanced opinions about this poor man. I do appreciate Picasso coming on. I thought it was very interesting. Listen, people tell their story, and if they do so as honestly as they can, or they say they are being, it is up to the audience to decide whether they agree or believe it or love the person or don't feel the vibe or whatever. This person is clearly there's something about him. I'm trying to think of if we have an equivalent of Agazadeh in Western culture. I mean, I guess you'd say I don't know, like the son of a royal or something. There really isn't something where you'd say Agazadeh is. I mean, it's pejorative, right? There's no such thing as a good Agazadeh. No. Okay.
It's mostly the connotation is usually negative. Like for instance, Don Jr. is technically an Agazadeh at this, like right now.
Yeah, but you wouldn't say, oh, Don Jr. I mean, there's all kinds of negative things you could say about Donald Trump Jr., but you wouldn't say he's the son of a billionaire. Like that wouldn't necessarily suggest that you're saying something negative about him.
But that's what I was saying. Right now that his dad became a president of the United States, politician involved with government, and he's the son of the government.
But it depends on how you feel about that politician. So in this case, Agazadeh, I think, is used more as a negative. Like, I haven't heard someone using it positively.
Biden is an Agazadeh technically.
Oh.
Yeah. If anybody knows the answer to this, please write us. We're all confused.
I'm sure they will.
Oh, trust me, they will.
Easy, Keon. We already got enough mail on this.
Come to me, my pretties.
Anyway, thanks everybody for all your thoughts. What was that? The last one was the letter of the day?
No. Speaking of letter of the week, it's
letter of the week. Sorry,
right
letter of the week.
Yay!
Chat, cut the music. It's the letter of the week.
Club. So the letter of the week this week.
How dare you bring on an Agazadeh? Signed.
No, actually.
Most of the audience.
I got so desperate that I had to find an older episode.
No.
I'm kidding. No. So this user wrote to us recently, but she, I believe it says, yes, she happened to write to us on the first episode, the very first episode that we had with Hamid Esmailian.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think she wrote to us last week. She wrote, and this is from Sasha Karma Yang Chen. She wrote us, your interview with our most beloved Leonard Cohen got me here to discover Roqe. What a journey, Mr. Ghomeshi. May 2021 bring better days for all of us and our Mother Earth. Looking forward to see you on screen and spreading the magic like you did once again, sir. Love from India.
Wow. From India. Getting to Roqe via my 2009 interview with Leonard Cohen. I appreciate that. Sasha, what was the full name?
Sasha Karma Yang Chen.
Karma Yang Chen.
That sounds Chinese.
Or it's got
Asian.
karma in it. And she's in India.
She or he?
Oh, he. Sasha could
Is
be
it
a
a
he.
he?
Sasha can be a he
I
as
thought
well.
Sasha was a female name.
It's a unisex name.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But I only heard for men.
Well,
Really?
Obama's daughter is named Sasha.
Oh,
we go.
yeah.
Sasha.
Maybe in Persian.
Well, he or she wrote a very lovely letter to us. So.
Right. Well, thank you very much. That's a very kind letter, and I'm glad you found us on Roqe, and I hope you keep listening. And I'm thrilled that you're listening from India. Thank you, the fabulous Keon.
No problem. I found a rose throughout all the thorns.
Despite the, let me just tell you something though. Every doctor has his thorns. All right.
I'll let him know.
Thank you, Reza, Shaya, Keon, Ponta, Mona from Melbourne. This is full time for Roqe for today. I keep telling you this, but I keep wanting you to check it out because it's getting better and better all the time. Roqemedia.com is the website. Not necessarily the YouTube or Instagram or whatever. Go actually check out roqemedia.com. You can see Chef Haas's video of making his latest recipe for Fesenjun sauce there. You can check out our previous episodes, all of our guests and links to them there. and our support page, rookmedia.com. Thanks to the amazing people who put this show together each week. Producer Susan, Ponta the artist, Thoughtful Nagin, the fabulous Keon, Sabi Roham, Alay Merdad, Master Muhammad, Captain Reza, and Groovy Shaya. Thank you to all of you out there supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. You can find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. Mizun Bashi.